Warning, the following audio transmission is based on theory and is intended for entertainment purposes only. It's Doomsday and its affiliates will not be held liable for anything your dumbass does. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome everybody to It's Doomsday podcast. Today is February 13th, 2022. Time is 1811 and joining me today is Al, aka Big Daddy Prep. What's up, Al?
How are you, my friend Jester? We've been away for a few days, but hey, we're ready to go. I hope the listeners are ready for a really great show today.
I hope so too. And once again, I want to apologize to the listeners. Like I said, we had an issue with the server. We had to wipe everything and bring it back. This is why we didn't record last week. And also, from what my understanding is, all the past episodes that are gone, that didn't go back up, my understanding is you could still get those on CastBox, that they're still there. This is what I'm hearing. I don't know yet. I haven't tried it, but check out CastBox. Let us know.
Hey preppers, do you want 10% off survival food? Go to www.readywise.com and use code DOOM10 at checkout for 10% off all your survival food needs. Again, that's code DOOM10 at checkout at readywise.com, DOOM10 for 10% off at readywise.com.
I looked at CastBox and I saw a couple, but I didn't check every one of them, Jester, but I did check a couple. They were there.
Gotcha. Okay, so tonight's episode is the best firearms for the apocalypse.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And this is an exciting episode for me, but I've had my mind made up about what I think is best for a while. And anybody that listens to the show, you know, in the past, you know that I've gone back and forth a little bit, but I think in my head I've got it figured out now, like what are the best. But, I mean, I'm ready to go. I'm all in for this episode. Just FYI, it's probably going to be a two-parter. Al, if you want to take the lead on this, because I know you got show notes, I'm just going to kick back and enjoy my protein shake, you know.
Okay, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to hit you with a couple of facts as I researched them this week. And I'll keep my personal belief out till later on till we get discussing. But facts, as I went through this week, I looked up the most popular, quote-unquote, caliber of firearm, and I kind of cross-referenced a bunch of different sources, so I'm not going to make just one source, but this is pretty much the list I compiled of the five most popular. The 22 LR long rifle was in the top 5, that's for sure. The 9mm, the 308, the 223, and the 12 gauge. As far as apocalypse, doomsday, most favorite type, because for the most part, they all run the same. Preppers and apocalypse, people like us, compared to what's really being purchased in mass. Also, and you're probably going to disagree with some of this right here when it comes to popular brands, because I know you're a specific kind of brand kind of guy, but the most popular brands, this is by people reporting now, Smith & Wesson was 30.7% people reporting that that's the brand of basic firearm, we'll say pistol, that they were buying. Ruger was a 25.5% and Glock with 23.2%, which breaks my heart. And I know it makes you happy that Glock make the top 3 because my SIG didn't seem to fall into that very small part of the category. And I'm not happy with the people that reported on this crap. But anyway, we'll just go with that. But I will say that what I did find with America's favorite pistol type and or brand is that at number 5 in popularity with the top 5 was the Glock G19. The SIG P938 took the 4th spot. In 3rd was the Springfield XDS. Number 2 was the Luger Lightweight Compact, and then at number 1 was the Smith & Wesson M&P Shield. So, those are the facts as reported by the internet, because I don't have my own company where I can just go out and basically, ask America what they like. But that's basically a list that I compiled from several different sources as far as most popular brands, and then popular types that have been purchased in recent years. So, with the facts being said there, give me what you think about it, because I know you're probably going to disagree with some of these polls, as they say.
Well, okay, I think anything we read on Glock is going to be a bit skewed. There's 2 reasons why. The first reason is I don't think that they count law enforcement sales into individual sales. So you have a lot of law enforcement agencies out there that issue the Glocks as a sidearm.
Yes.
And they're not, I mean, yes, law enforcement agencies are a consumer, but they're not your average consumer. So that's going to keep sales up, but it's going to keep popularity down, right? Now, my personal opinion, as far as a sidearm for the apocalypse, I prefer Glock. Anybody that argues with me, I mean, I have a very simple counter argument. And the counter to it is this. With it being one of the most popular selling handgun brands out there, you're going to come across these things in the apocalypse.
Yes.
A lot of these parts are interchangeable. The slides are interchangeable. The barrels are interchangeable. The magazines are interchangeable. So if you have a failure within your Glock, you're more likely going to find another Glock to repair yours than you are, say, something of having a off-model SIG or an off-model Smith & Wesson, right? It's just, fact is, you're going to find those parts to repair it, because I could take a lot of the internals out of a Glock 17 9mm and use them to repair a Glock 22 40 cal, right?
Yes.
And vice versa. I could take, if I have a Glock 17 and I have a Glock 22, I could take the total slide and everything off and put it on the Glock 17's bottom end, and it's going to fire and it's going to work. It's going to be fine. The only thing that changes a little bit with that are the gens. They have to be the same gens for everything to go right. But that's about it. So my personal opinion, absolutely get the Glock. I mean, it's just, it is what it is. Get the Glock.
Right. And we all have our opinions on this. These were just the facts as they came by. Now, every single prepper, homesteader, gun carrier is going to have their personal favorite. And I found that guns are something that you can sit down and argue endlessly about. People just can just sit down and argue the finer nuances till the end of the earth. But, that's everyone's personal choices. So.
Now, one thing about choosing a caliber for a sidearm, though, even though it's not my favorite round, I have to recommend that if you're selecting a sidearm for the apocalypse, if you're looking for that caliber for Doomsday, I do recommend going with the 9mm. The only reason why, and this is the only reason, because it is one of the top selling handgun ammunition. So you're more likely to come across that in the apocalypse than you are, say, 40 S&W or 380 or another round. The 9mm is one of the most commons you're gonna find. So it's good to stock the 9mm. It's good to have the 9mm sidearm.
I agree totally. And ultimately, about making your preparations when it comes to firearms and security during a grid down situation is you want to be able to use what is commonly found. But let me interject just one piece of my thought on this, okay? I've always said that any firearm is better than no firearm. Having something to protect yourself with. So if the listener out there says, I don't have what they're talking about, I got to run out and get this. Sure, that's a great thing. But if you have something to protect yourself with, it's better than nothing. You can always work up to something else. but you want to be able to find common ammunition with what you have to use. And you want to be able to repair it. I mean, let's face it, guns break. It happens. Guns tear up. It happens. You put enough rounds to them, they're going to give out. Being able to repair, like you said earlier, and then being able to find ammunition. One more point about that is this. I always say a firearm without ammunition is just a sexy hammer. That's it, okay? It's just a sexy hammer. Because if you have nothing to fire out of it, if you can't use the weapon, it's pretty useless. That's my take on it.
I've never heard the term "sexy hammer" before, but I like it, and we're gonna put that on a T-shirt.
It's a sexy hammer. It's a sexy hammer. Yeah, if you have no ammunition for it, that's what I've always thought.
That's great. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So to go back to this caliber thing and selection of the sidearm you may go with. So there's one thing I want to throw out there that a lot of people are against, and one of the main reasons I'm bringing this up is I'm picking one of these up soon. A lot of people hate on the Kel-Tec Sub 2000. The reasoning for hating on these Kel-Tec Sub 2000s doesn't make a lot of sense. In my opinion, it's a foldable, collapsible rifle that accepts Glock magazines, or I think it's also available to where it's can take Smith & Wesson magazines as well. But the one I'm picking up is chambered in 9mm, and it accepts Glock magazines, right? Yep. So something like this to pick up to kind of balance and go with your sidearm, the idea that I have 10 magazines for my Glock 17. Well, that also means I have 10 magazines for my Sub 2000. Say that I have 1,000 rounds for my Glock 17. Well, I also have 1,000 rounds for my Sub 2000. So when you're picking and choosing and selecting, I'm not saying to go down that road where every single thing is universal, but it is kind of a good idea if you're in a limited area, if there's limited rounds you can get, if the only thing you could find on your shelves is 9mm, obviously pick up things that can shoot 9mm, right? Of course. But I digress. Let's move away from that.
Well, one of my thoughts as far as apocalypse firearms, Jester, is you want to be able to take what you might find on quote unquote the battlefield of life and use that ammunition or use that firearm for your betterment. And knowing the rounds that the U.S. and other countries use more prevalently is only going to help you and reinforce your survival in the future. So being able to pick up, in my mindset, I want to have something that I can use with almost any ammunition that I pick up. If I walk it along and I find someone that's no longer with us and they have 9mm ammunition, I want to be able to use it. 223, I want to be able to use it. 7.62 by 39, I want to be able to use it. But that also leads to having a whole lot of guns, and you can't carry a whole lot of guns. So being able to interchange things, it's hugely important.
Absolutely. So this is one of the reasons, and it's not, I don't want to go too far down this road, but we all see the pistols out there like the Taurus Judge that shoot multiple calibers, right? Yep. I have a Smith & Wesson Governor that shoots 2.5-inch 410, 45 ACP, and 45 long Colt. I didn't purchase this for a doomsday scenario. I purchased it for the idea of I have snakes and bear where I live. So if there's rattlesnakes or if there's bear trying to attack me, this is a good universal gun to carry.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Whenever I started thinking ahead to the doomsday aspect, I was like, well, 410 are great to have for small game and things like this. And then if I come across somebody that's got a bunch of 45 ACP, I then have a weapon for it. I then have something I could utilize this for. So guns like the Taurus Judge and the Smith & Wesson Governor, or these, I think one of them is the Raging Bull, having these things are not a bad thing to have in the event that you start coming across multiple ammunitions. And then you also have ones that I don't know what the names of these are off the top of my head, but there's a lot of rifle combos out there now that shoot 22 LR and 410. They either have an interchangeable barrel or they have like an over-under barrel. I came across one the other day that the top barrel, I believe the top barrel was 410 and the bottom barrel was 22 LR. It was like an over-under setup. And I was thinking about buying it for my son, but then I picked it up and I was like, wow, this thing is way too heavy for my little boy. Like it's just, it's too much. So I ended up getting away from that. But there's a lot of things we're seeing out there now where we have, guns that have interchangeable calibers or interchangeable barrels. And the same thing goes for the 5.5 things that are chambered in 5.56 NATO. They could accept the 223. So just, food for thought when selecting these things.
I fully understand. We own a judge. Absolutely. I'm with you on that. I tell you what, okay. Let me see if I explain my mindset as far as guns, that if I'm making a list of things that I want to have for a grid down and apocalypse situation, I kind of have a checklist in my head. Now, anything that you add to this is great. That's wonderful. I'm not down on what anybody else's list is, but let me tell you what mine is, okay? First of all, I want to have at least one pistol. Whether it be an automatic revolver, it makes no difference. A sidearm is mandatory, okay? You might have 18 of them, 18 of different calibers, styles, revolvers. It doesn't make any difference. But a mandatory one of those for a sidearm, okay? Number two, a shotgun. I have over 2 decades of working in the penitentiary system. I'm telling you right now, the rack of a shotgun makes people wet their britches. So having a shotgun for home defense or for a defensive position is key to me. Number three is having what I call a battle rifle, which is your basic shit hits the fan, I got to protect myself rifle. Okay. I personally myself, I prefer an AK platform. Some people prefer an AR platform, but whichever it may be, one of those needs to be on your list. I also believe, four, you need to have a small caliber, something for small game, small protection, whatever it may be. Let's face it, you're not going to go out. You can go out hunting all day long with your battle rifle to kill deer, hog, or whatever. But a 22 type platform is key for small game. And then also a long range rifle. And I'm talking about something that's a real AT&T reach out and touch somebody long distance rifle. I personally chose 7mm because I like a 7mm. I was comfortable shooting one. I was also comfortable shooting a kind of long range 223 like we used to use in the prison system, mid to long range. We could, shoot someone that was escaping from a long distance. But that's my preferences. That's basically on my list. Now, your list is probably different, and other people's might be too, but that fulfills my list.
So, on this note, for those of you guys out there that don't know, there's a system, and I don't know if anybody's interested in picking this up, but there's a system out there called Excalibur. And Excalibur is a system that works in smoothbore 12 gauge shotguns. It's a single shot system. It's a sleeve system that goes into a break open 12 gauge. Okay. And what this sleeve system does is it changes the calibers you can shoot. So it goes from a 12 gauge to a 22 LR, 38 special, 357, 9mm, 45 ACP, 45 long Colt, 410 shotgun, 223, 7.62 by 39, and 308. And I'm assuming that at this point they've maybe upgraded these. And we're not getting paid by these guys. I'm just throwing that out there for, if all you have is a 12 gauge and you're like, what do I do if I stumble across all these different rounds? The Excalibur system is a good way to utilize what you may find in the field.
Absolutely.
So just food for thought. Like I said, we're not getting paid by these guys, but our goal is to help you survive. So this is a great system to have if you have a break open 12 gauge. As far as I agree with you, Al, on what guns to have for whatnot. I have two 12 gauges. I think those are absolutely ideal for a lot of situations. Although I do not like shotguns for close quarter combat. But for the apocalypse situation, being able to have a 12 gauge with slugs to take out big things like to take down big game or to stop an engine block on a vehicle. Things like this, that big heavy hitter idea, I like the 12 gauges for that. As far as battle rifle goes, hands down, I go with the AR-15 all day long. I know I'm good with that thing. Close range, long range, I'm good. As far as having a long range rifle, I agree with you. There are going to be those times you're going to need to reach out and touch someone at a very far distance. As far as caliber goes, I keep a really weird off caliber that not a lot of people have ever heard of. My preferred long range caliber is the 270. I don't know why. It's what I've grown to like over the years. It's one of my preferred rounds. It's not very common. It's just there's something significant about that round. And then I also like the idea of having a lot of 22 LRs. In my opinion, that is the best round to carry. And I have 3 or 4 different 22 LRs. I've got a couple pistols. I got a couple rifles. Right. So if I need to do something like dispatch an animal that's in a trap, I've got the pistols for that. If I need to do something a little further away, I have the rifles. So, we'll be good on that front.
Right. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And this is my checklist. As you build out, if you have 5 shotguns or 5.22, whatever it might be, these are the basics that I think that you really need. That's my opinion. Now I will say this much: it makes no difference what you have. If you don't know your weapon, if you don't have ammunition, if you're not comfortable and have used your weapon and become comfortable with it, and if you don't know your weapon, you might end up not having your weapon for very long. So being able to be comfortable with your weapon and being able to use it effectively, whether it be dispatching an animal or protecting yourself from an intruder, whatever it might be, you're not going to be successful if you don't know your weapon. And that doesn't necessarily mean going to the range and putting 10,000 rounds to it. Yes, that's a great idea to be able to shoot your weapon, but also being comfortable with your weapon and knowing your weapon inside out. If it jams, what do I do? How much ammunition do I have? How fast does it fire? Knowing these things ahead of time is only going to be an advantage to you in the near future or in a grid down situation.
I agree with you. And Al, the one thing we don't talk about a whole lot are firearms failures. And I think that's something we should touch on real quick. The more time you spend at the range, the more time you spend shooting, you're going to learn more about these failures. You're going to learn what stovepipes are. You're going to learn what squibs are. You're going to learn if you have a magazine failure. These are things that you're going to need to know. Right. A lot of people don't know how to unjam a stovepipe. A lot of people don't know what it's like to get a squib. And, certain things like a squib, you've basically just created a pipe bomb if you don't know how to identify that that's there. Okay.
Absolutely.
Now, you're talking doomsday apocalyptic scenario. You might be shooting reloaded ammo. Squibs are a lot more likely with reloaded ammo than they are with factory ammunition. The only reason why is because there's a more likelihood for human error. So if somebody underloads the powder, you can get a squib. If maybe there's some moisture in there and it doesn't burn fast enough, you could get a squib, and then your next shot could blow that barrel up in your face. Right?
I agree with you wholeheartedly.
So
Jester, you couldn't stress this anymore by putting a red light on top of what you're saying right now. You're absolutely correct.
So just, being able to identify some of these things, it's good to identify it now before it's that life-threatening scenario, okay? And trying to describe one of these squibs, the best thing I could tell you is if you're at the range and you hear a pop instead of a bang, you could have a squib. If you hear a pop and that handgun doesn't fully cycle or it stops halfway in cycling, you could have a squib. And that's at that point when you want to, clear your firearm and then inspect it in the safest manner possible.
Right. When I went to the Corrections Academy many moons ago, Jester, I had a firearms instructor that I didn't particularly care for as a person, but he was a great instructor. And he said, if you fire your weapon and your weapon does not fire, before you fire the next shot, you need to identify this. And I didn't understand what he was talking about until he would put a blank round in your revolver and have you go out and start firing. And when you hit that blank, it didn't go off. And if you went on to the next, he would immediately hit you with a stick. Now, that sounds cruel. That sounds like, but you know what? When he did that, he only had to do it one time if you had any mental capacity at all. Because when you hit that first dead, nothing happened, and you stopped, opened your weapon up, and inspected it, you were good because you never forgot. But once he wrapped you with a stick one time, you would no longer do that. So it became second nature for me as I'm shooting, as I'm firing. I hear that fire, and when I fire and it doesn't, I stop. My hand comes off the trigger automatically because at that point, you're right. You have a pipe bomb. It will blow up in your face, and I don't know if probably have a lot of experienced shooters to list us, but inexperienced shooters, you do not want this exploding in your face. I assure you, it is not a pretty sight. I have seen it happen, and it will hurt you at least. The least thing it will do is hurt you.
Right. And just remember that, in Doomsday, in the apocalypse, you're not going to be able to just rush to the emergency room if something happens.
No, sir. No, sir.
So just the fact that you can identify these things and you know what they are and you know how to deal with them before they become a danger or they become problematic is gonna make a world of difference in the apocalypse. Just knowing these little things. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get a lot of you guys, like Al said, a lot of you guys might be experienced shooters and this information may be redundant. But for a lot of people out there that are new to this, it's not redundant. So that's why we're stressing on it. And the one thing I've picked up over the years with my firearms training is everything's redundant. You're going to get redundancy. I don't care if you're the 25-year marksman. When you go out on that line, you're treated like the guy that's on the line for the first time. It's all redundant. It's always going to be redundant.
Right. Like I've said before to you, Jester, I didn't care if it was the little housewife that got a job where she had to carry a firearm, or whether it was an experienced shooter that had shot for 40 years. It made no difference to me. When you went to the range, you were all the same. And a lot of those bad habits that people had came with them. And it was my job as the instructor to break them of those habits and build good habits. But when it comes to ammunition, if you want your ammunition to be effective, there's certain things you need to do as far as ammo longevity. Now, doing a little research this last week, it reinforced what I said. You can indefinitely store ammunition correctly. Ammunition doesn't have a use by date on or anything like that. And there's really two categories of ammunition. That's hunting and defense ammunition. And understanding the difference between the two. You want to have defense ammunition for yourself and then, regular hunting ammunition. But understand, hunting ammunition becomes defense ammunition when you don't have defense ammunition.
Hey preppers, do you want 10% off survival food? Go to www.readywise.com and use code DOOM10 at checkout for 10% off all your survival food needs. Again, that's code DOOM10 at checkout at readywise.com, DOOM10 for 10% off at readywise.com.
Exactly. And, so here's... So I personally stock a lot of range ammunition for Doomsday, right? Yes. I don't go out and I don't spend all the money on... the hollow points or the hydro shocks or the critical defense ammunition. Like, my stockpiles are just jacketed rounds. They're nothing special. Right. They are target ammunition. At the end of the day, I don't care if I shoot someone with a hydro shock or with a regular range round, they're going to go down. Period. Right. It's going to happen. When it comes to certain long range calibers, I like to buy things that I'm sighted in for. So I have a specific round that I run through my 270, and that's the only thing I'll buy in stock for that, right? When it comes to my AR-15, I try now. I can't say I always do this, but I try to only buy 5.56 NATO and only a particular grain. Just because once you're comfortable with that grain, once you're comfortable with that round, you're going to be more efficient with it. A lot of guys don't realize when you're talking long range, changing things like the bullet type, the grain is going to change the effectiveness at long range. Okay. If you're sighted in for that certain grain and you go lower, you're going to find out that rifle's hitting a different spot on the target. So, but when it comes to handgun ammo, it's a pretty universal thing. If you're comfortable shooting a Hydra Shock out of a 9mm at 15 yards and you're hitting good and you're doing a bunch of kill shots and you're getting good center target shots, if you switch to a range round, it's going to be about the same. It's not going to be much different.
I agree totally.
A lot of people hate on the Winchester white box rounds, but that is one of the most rounds I stock because it's so cheap to stock.
Absolutely. Jester, it's a proven fact that how you train. I hear people talk about, well, when I train, I do this, but for real life, I do this. Your training is going to be your real life when the pressure comes on. The way you train every single time you fire your weapon and go to the range is what you're going to do when the pressure comes on. So people have this way of they think that they're going to be, they're going to be like some Wild West outlaw, just bing, 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 doing all this stuff. But when they go to the range, they don't have good practices when they go there. I can attest for the fact being in situations in the past that involved firearms myself, whether it be in the prison system or in private use, the way you train with the weapons that you have or your lack of training will show when the pressure comes on. You're not suddenly going to become 007 with that weapon if you don't train properly.
Now, I'll tell you what, I couldn't agree with that more. I know when I am not at the range, when I am here in an uncontrolled environment, I'm out here like a Billy Badass running around doing a bunch of dumb shit, right? Me and my buddies are out here shooting tannerite. We're out here dumping 30 round mags. We're being goofballs, right? When you're at the shooting range, it's a way more controlled environment. I was lucky enough to where I got some decent, like good tactical firearms training throughout the years. So I got to do a lot more cooler shit than just, stand at the line and wait till you hear bang. Right. I got to do some pretty cool stuff. And I've got the competition shoot, which that's a lot of fun. Competition shooting is very fun. Just for our guys out there, if you're looking for a way to hone skills and you're looking for good training for Doomsday, believe it or not, competition shooting is a really good thing to do because it's keeping you under pressure, right? It's competitive. You're under pressure, so you're operating under pressure, but you're in an environment that you have to remain safe because there's so many other people around. You have to follow all the rules. So it's bringing multiple thought processes together. You've got the pressure, the safety side. People are watching you. You have to follow instruction. There's a lot going on there. So if you can find any competition shooting in your area and go do it, not only is it a lot of fun, but it's also great training.
Right. Jester, I didn't do a lot of competition shooting. I'm not going to lie. I did a lot of range shooting and later on in my career, I became a firearms instructor and I took a lot of people to the range. And it's some of the best times of my life I spent on the range. But I'm going to tell you exactly when I learned how serious real life was. I used to be on a SWAT CRT type team years and years ago when I was in the prison system in another state from where I live now. And we were in an actual competition, like a certain team type competition at another unit. And one of the guys that was with me, he had an equipment failure where his strap basically broke. 12 gauge shotgun fell into the ground and become packed with some sand, some debris, some whatever it might be, muddy sand. And my first reaction was to clear that by thumping it because it was a 12 gauge, thumping it and getting out of there. And even though he didn't appreciate the time after it was over with, the competition was over with, my friend that was the leader of the team said, if he hadn't done that, it would blow up in your face. He didn't like the fact I thumped his shotgun, but I seen it full of sand at the time, and I knew what was going to happen because eventually we were getting to the shooting part of the competition. And these are things that immediately when you see them, oh no, we can't shoot that. Be a familiarity with firearms, period, will teach you things that happen. That's what I'm saying about being comfortable and going out there and learning your weapon, learning and observing your weapon. Your weapon is not always perfect. You need to check your weapon every time you use it, every time you put it away. That only comes with actual hands on it. You can't buy a firearm, put it up on the shelf and say, okay, I'm covered for the apocalypse. It doesn't work like that, folks. There's money and time have to be invested in being proficient with any firearm. And you'll find once you get proficient in one firearm, it's easier to become proficient in another one. But having respect for firearms is the key. I mean, there's 1,000 things you can train someone on, and eventually you'll revert back to them in a pressure situation.
So a lot of people, I guess a lot of people don't take into consideration how important the training is and how Al's mentioned, and you can't just put this up on the shelf and forget about it and think that it's just going to be there for Doomsday. Doing little things. I have a buddy, he was a Marine, and he told me, he's like, one of the best things you could do is just sit there and dry fire that thing all day long. Get familiar with that trigger pull. Target alignment. Like sit down, look down the sights, get familiar with that, pull the trigger. Do that repeatedly till it becomes muscle memory. After that, get familiar with reloading magazines. Take empty mags, load one, drop one, load one, drop one. Get into muscle memory of, to where you can locate that mag release, whether it's pitch black, in the dark, this, that, you're confused. Maybe you got an eye injury, you can't see what you're doing. Like, get familiar with that, make these things become muscle memory. And he's right. And you will develop these things the more time you spend at the range, the more time you spend training. These things will become second nature. I could locate things on my firearms in the dark because I've worked with them so much and I've held them so much. I worked a lot of jobs where I carried at night. And I always knew where that firearm was located at. I knew where the release was for my holster at all times. And you'll sit there throughout the day tapping that release on your holster, right? Or you'll sit there and you'll just have your hand on that gun, rubbing the mag release. Like you'll know where these things are. They'll become second nature. But none of these things happen if they're sitting on a shelf.
Right. Well, Jester, as I was doing a little research this week and I was looking through the interweb, of course, I had to look at that to get a few facts and figures. And I found something shocking on there that I totally disagree with. And you may disagree with me on this, but in one of the sections I swelled through, it said that the NRA recommends that guns be stored unloaded. I don't know what storage of unloaded guns mean. I don't have any stored guns. I have guns that aren't being used at the time. I don't personally, especially when it has to do with guns that I may have to retrieve at any time, day, night, no matter what time. I never recommend that a gun be stored unloaded, myself personally. I always like a loaded gun. To me is the way a gun's supposed to be. Now, you may disagree with me on that. Every gun I own is loaded. And they're all loaded for a reason because I may have to use them. I don't have time to look around. When you unload things, just one thing gets separated from another. A gun gets separated from ammunition. Your loaded magazines get separated from this gun. And then what do? I don't have 10 minutes to tell an aggressor, oh, hold on a minute. I got to get my gun. So I totally disagree with the NRA.
So I disagree with that as well, but I have certain firearms I keep around for different reasons. I have a bedside gun that's always ready to go at all times.
Yep.
I have like my daily concealed that's ready to go at all times, and then accessible in the safe. I have the AR with a mag in it. All I got to do is rack it, and I'm good to go. Certain things I do not store loaded. For me, the hunting rifle I break out once a year. I don't keep loaded. I don't keep the muzzle loader loaded all the time. You know what I mean? I don't keep the shotguns loaded all the time. But certain things I know I need, I keep those ones ready to go.
I can totally agree with you on that. When I read that, it just was like a blaring, flashing light to me, and I thought, "Oh Lord, that's horrible to tell people that." But that's just me. Now, we all know that if we want a gun to work accurately and appropriately, we need to make sure that the ammunition that we have is stored properly and is taken care of, because ammunition will last indefinitely if taken care of properly. And everyone should know that that is in a dry, cool place. There are different recommendations that I was reading on the internet of what was recommended stuff. Extreme temperatures of 150 degrees or higher is highly, not recommended. Now, most places don't get 150 degrees or higher, so that means most temperatures that normal people would be at won't be higher than 150 degrees. Even in a locked car, most cars locked don't get over 125 degrees, period. But that's good to know that you're keeping your ammunition in a cool, dry place, accessible. I've seen people store ammunition all different kinds of ways. I've even seen people take them and, put them in Ziploc bags and vacuum seal ammunition. That's fine. But most people will store ammunition in a proper area. You don't want to get wet. You don't want to get it overly hot. You really don't want to get it too cold. We just want to keep it a normal living. And I like, if you're comfortable in there in the area, then your ammunition's probably comfortable.
So I agree with you on that. I know there is a recommendation that says ammo is supposed to be rotated out like every 5 years, but I think that's more for military aspect, law enforcement aspect. I've stored rounds for years and had them still fire, and I don't do anything special to store my ammunition. I just keep it locked in the safe with moisture absorbers, like the what are they called? You know what I'm talking about, Al? Like the moisture absorbers, like the packs. There's a name for them. I can't remember the name.
Yeah, oxygen absorbers silica packs, things like that.
I want to say they're called like Ridex, maybe not Ridex, something like that. But what they do is they pull all the moisture out of the air. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I keep my ammunition dampered. Yes, there it is.
Yeah, dampered. Yeah.
Dampered. So yeah, I keep the damperids in the gun safe, and I've never had an issue. I've got ammunition that's been sitting around here for 20 years. Occasionally we break into it because we've got some weird calibers. Like my dad's got like an old 243 that we take out and shoot every once in a while. And I don't even see 243 ammo on the shelf half the time. But we've got old rounds that, some of these might be older than I am. I don't know how long he's been stocking this stuff for. But we take them out and they shoot and they're just fine. So we had one of the listeners, one of the followers on TikTok, one of the listeners came on the live the other day, and he brought up that he goes to the dollar store, and he buys the clear nail polish, like the sealer. And he says he'll take a bullet and he'll paint around the projectile, and he'll paint over the primer to ensure it so it's not getting moisture in there. And when I buy 5.56 rounds, because I know I'm storing those long term, I do try to buy those sealed ones. Just because the moisture getting into the powder and the primers is what's going to, make those go bad.
Absolutely.
So yeah, moisture is the enemy.
Also, along with that about the Dollar Tree, dollar store, they usually have these small, like little dampness collectors. I didn't realize how good they were until I put one or two in our gun vault last year. I put a couple of them in there. They're just a little dollar. They're maybe $1.25 now. They're little dampness catchers, you know. I put one in there and I went back a couple months later and I was kind of moving some stuff around and it had almost a half inch of moisture in there, Jester. And this is in my gun safe that is dry in a dry, cool place. But it was in the middle of summer, humidity and all, and it had pulled that much dampness out of the air. And I thought, my God, yeah, it's a mandatory for me from now on to have one of those in there. So I always keep one of those in there now. They're just little cheapies you get at the Dollar Tree.
Oh, absolutely. And they do sell, I don't know exactly what they're called, but they're like a heat stick that goes in the gun safes now, and you plug them in, and they're just a little rod, and they heat up just enough to dissipate the moisture in the air inside the gun safe. And a lot of people are upgrading to those now too, which I guess might be a better long-term option. Like when I do those damp rids, I probably have to change those out about every 3 months. In Doomsday, you're not going to go to the store and buy those anymore. That's not going to be an option. You're still going to want to keep your guns good. So maybe at that point you throw some rice in there. I don't know. There's got to be a way to counteract it.
You're right. You have to get that moisture up. Also, when it comes to ammunition itself, having your ammunition stored, there's a lot of people say, oh, you need to store it this way or that way. Storing it loosely, to me, has never been a problem. Storing it loose, storing it in containers. It doesn't have to be perfectly lined up and organized. If that's the kind of person you are, that's fine. But anyway, you store it as long as it stays cool and dry. Usually it's not a problem, and I'd have no problem with that either. But there was also a question brought up recently. Someone said about the amount of ammunition you have, and nowhere could I find, nor could the internet seem to find, anywhere in any federal law that it says how much ammunition you can have. Now, that's been a problem in the past because they've tried to say that so-and-so had this much. When you hear a news report, and he had 100,000 rounds in his possession. Well, nowhere in federal law can I find how much ammunition that you can store, although they deem it excessive amounts for certain situations. But there's no real law that you're violating if you have that 100,000 rounds.
Well, I'll tell you what, Al, that's where we'll drop out with today because we're coming up on our time limit here. Mm-hmm. But that's also where we'll pick back up on part 2 of this episode.
Right.
That's a good place to pick back up.
I would like to recommend that our followers hit us up with questions this week if you have any after listening to this episode, because we'd like to have some questions from you next week.
Absolutely. And to do that, the email, it's doomsday2020@gmail.com. Find Al on TikTok and Clapper at big_daddy_prep. And find me on the TikTok and Clapper at It's Doomsday Podcast 2.0. Al, you got anything you want to add before we're out of here?
Nope. Well, just stay tuned next week for number 2 because we're going to have way more information on that second one, I promise you.
Absolutely. We'll see you guys next week.
This is an emergency action message. At approximately 1 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, NORAD is tracking 15 ICBM nuclear missiles inbound to the following cities: Orlando, Miami, Pittsburgh, Dover, Newark, Richland, Philadelphia, New York City, Baltimore, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Boston, Seattle, Detroit. This is an extremely deadly situation. Stay tuned. The next emergency message will be a presidential address.